Have you ever wondered why certain women seem to ignite a man's imagination in ways he cannot explain? Why her presence lingers in his thoughts like a forbidden melody he can neither silence nor escape? Some women embody a magnetism so quietly dangerous, so elusive, that it unsettles the male psyche at its core. This is not about beauty alone. It is about archetypes, about the secret language of energy, silence, and subtle behavior that pierces through a man's armor and awakens parts of himself he never dared to confront. Carl Jung spoke of the anima, the feminine spirit hidden in every man's unconscious, a presence that both terrifies and intoxicates him. When a woman unconsciously embodies this archetype, when her actions resonate with the shadows of his inner world, she becomes more than herself in his eyes. She becomes the mirror of his unhealed wounds, the muse of his desires, the ghost of his regrets. He does not fall for her by choice, he falls into her, as if into a dream that blurs the boundaries of love, obsession, and fear. One of the most dangerously seductive behaviors is mystery. A woman who withholds parts of herself, who doesn't immediately reveal her entire story, unsettles the male ego. Men crave certainty, validation, and clarity. Yet it is the lack of these that draws them deeper. She is not unreadable in a cold way, but in a poetic way, her silence carries meaning, her glances seem to suggest untold depths, her presence stirs questions rather than offering answers. For a man, this becomes irresistible. He is compelled to fill in the gaps, to chase after what cannot be possessed, to unravel what may never be fully revealed. Another behavior that bans the male psyche is the art of selective attention, not indifference, but the delicate power of giving her energy sparingly, as if her attention were rare gold. A woman who does not pour herself out freely, who knows that her energy is sacred, becomes an enigma. When she looks at him, he feels chosen. When she withdraws, he feels abandoned. This oscillation between closeness and distance destabilizes his ego, forcing him into obsession. He cannot dominate her, for she belongs first to herself. She embodies Marcus Aurelius's wisdom, she governs her mind, and thus no man truly governs her. Seduction also blooms in the way she embraces her own shadow. Jung taught that we are captivated not by perfection, but by the reflection of our hidden selves. A woman who acknowledges her darker emotions without shame, her jealousy, her rage, her longing, becomes profoundly human, and therefore magnetic. Men are haunted by her because she does not pretend. She is not the pure archetype of light, nor the cold archetype of ice. She is the union of opposites, Eve and Lilith, saint and temptress woven into one. A man who encounters such a woman feels both threatened and alive, because she mirrors the very dualities within his own soul that he has long denied. Dangerously seductive, too, is the way she carries detachment. A woman who can walk away, who does not cling to a man's validation, forces him into confrontation with his own insecurities. He is accustomed to women who grasp for his attention, but when she does not, he begins to question his worth. Her indifference burns hotter than passion. It awakens his fear of loss, his dread of insignificance. Paradoxically, it is her refusal to chase that makes him chase endlessly. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy pursuit, and when a woman embodies this freedom, she becomes untouchable, yet obsessively desired. And then there is the subtle eroticism of presence itself, the way she moves slowly, speaks softly, touches the world with grace. Not the obvious seduction of display, but the quiet seduction of being. Men sense this unconsciously. Her energy does not scream, it whispers. And it is precisely the whisper that penetrates deeper than the shout. She does not compete, she draws. She does not convince, she allows. In this state, she embodies the eternal feminine that Goethe described. The eternal feminine draws us upward. Her existence becomes a lesson, her essence a gravitational field. This is why some women haunt men long after they've gone. It is not about what she gave, but about what she withheld, not about what she said, but about the silences she allowed. Not about how much she needed him, but about how completely she belonged to herself. A man cannot escape such a woman because she represents the part of himself he is still searching for. And that, in the truest Jungian sense, is the dangerous seduction. She is the doorway to his unconscious, the reminder that his ego is not the master, only the mask. There is a moment in every man's life when he encounters a woman whose presence unsettles him in ways he cannot articulate. He may try to reason with himself, to dismiss her as ordinary, yet his body betrays him, his mind circles back, his dreams resurrect her image unbidden. What he does not realize is that her behaviors have touched the archetypal layers of his psyche. She has awakened what Jung called projection, the tendency to see in another what one has long buried within. This is why she feels dangerously seductive. She has become the living embodiment of his own inner world. Consider the way she listens, not with a frantic eagerness to please, but with the quiet stillness of one who has nothing to prove. Her silence becomes a canvas, and onto it, he projects his hopes, his wounds, his insecurities. He begins to believe she understands him in ways no one else ever has, not realizing it is his own desire for understanding that he sees mirrored back. To be in her presence is to feel simultaneously exposed and cherished. This paradox pierces his defenses, pulling him deeper into obsession. Her danger lies not in what she does overtly, but in the subtle contradictions she embodies. She may smile with warmth, but keep her distance with composure. She may invite intimacy through her softness, yet resist possession with her independence. This duality confuses the linear, logical part of a man's mind. He cannot categorize her, cannot predict her, cannot reduce her to a role. And so his ego, which craves control, begins to fracture under the weight of her mystery. What he calls seduction is often his own soul attempting to reconcile with its hidden fragments. Another behavior that ignites this spell is her refusal to collapse into neediness. When she feels longing, she does not beg for his presence. She channels it into her own world. She may paint, write, dance, or simply vanish into silence. He senses that she feels deeply but does not demand that he carry her emotions. This unsettles him because it dismantles the unspoken expectation that women should orbit men's approval. She becomes her own center of gravity. The more he tries to pull her in, the more she reveals that she cannot be possessed. In this lies her power. Dangerously seductive too is her ability to see through masks. Men often present themselves as powerful, confident, untouchable. Yet a woman who has wrestled with her own shadow perceives the fractures in his armor. Her gaze penetrates without judgment, stripping him bare not through attack but through presence. She sees a frightened boy behind the strong man, the loneliness beneath the charm. And rather than using this knowledge to flatter or manipulate, she simply acknowledges it in silence. This unnerves him, because most of the world colludes with his illusions. She, however, does not. Her recognition becomes addictive. He feels both exposed and deeply seen, as though she has unlocked a door to his unconscious. Even the way she walks away can be seductive, not in cruelty, but in the serenity of a woman who chooses herself above the approval of others. He senses that her love, if she were to give it, will be profound, yet he also knows that her absence will not diminish her. This strikes at the very heart of his ego, which craves control. She does not need him. She may want him, but her world remains intact without him. The ego shatters under this realization because it thrives on being the axis around which others revolve. In the face of her self-possession, he is humbled. This dangerous allure is not about manipulation. It is about authenticity. She does not perform to seduce. She simply lives as a whole being, refusing to amputate her depths to make herself palatable. Men feel this instinctively. They sense the weight of her unspoken boundaries, the richness of her inner life, the quiet defiance of her freedom. She becomes a symbol of what they fear most and desire most, a woman who does not seek permission to exist. And here's the irony. The very behaviors that make her dangerously seductive are often the fruits of suffering. A woman does not learn mystery without first being misunderstood. She does not learn detachment without first experiencing loss. She does not embody duality without first battling with her own shadow. It is the alchemy of pain that has forged her magnetism. What men experience as allure is often the residue of her survival. Her refusal to collapse when the world demanded she break. To encounter such a woman is to encounter the limits of one's own ego. For the man, it feels like seduction, but in truth, it is initiation. He is being drawn into confrontation with his unconscious. Into the journey Jung described as individuation, the integration of shadow, anima, and self. Whether he rises to this challenge or retreats in fear depends not on her, but on him. There is something profoundly unsettling about a woman who does not yield to the ordinary games of validation. She carries herself as though she has already tasted both ecstasy and despair, and no man can offer her anything she has not already faced within. This quiet authority radiates without her having to announce it. It is the softest form of rebellion, the rebellion of not needing. And it is precisely this that makes her presence linger in a man's psyche long after she has left the room. Men are often conditioned to believe that power lies in conquest, that to win a woman's affection is to secure his dominance. But when he encounters a woman who cannot be conquered, whose love cannot be coerced or purchased, he feels both attraction and terror. The terror comes from the recognition that here is someone he cannot control, someone who exists beyond his categories. The attraction comes because this woman represents his anima, the unconscious feminine within him, and she calls him toward wholeness. The paradox of being drawn and unsettled at once is what makes her dangerously seductive. Think of how she occupies silence. Most people rush to fill the void with chatter, afraid of what lingers in the quiet. She, however, lets silence breathe, as though it were an equal participant in the exchange. Her stillness becomes magnetic, pulling his restless mind into submission. He begins to notice his own heartbeat, the sound of his breath, the undercurrent of his thoughts. Without saying a word, she confronts him with himself. This confrontation is seductive because it strips him bare, exposing the hollowness beneath his bravado. Or imagine the way she responds to his attempts at dominance. He might try to provoke her with arrogance, test her with jealousy, or assert himself with authority. Yet, rather than reacting with submission or defensiveness, she remains steady. Perhaps she smiles faintly, perhaps she turns away, perhaps she simply refuses to engage. In that moment, he realizes that his usual tactics hold no power here. His ego trembles, for it is accustomed to bending others to its will. And yet her refusal only deepens his fascination. The very fact that she cannot be swayed is what binds him tighter. Dangerous seduction also resides in her unpredictability, not in erratic mood swings, but in the way she refuses to be scripted. One moment she is playful and light, the next she retreats into quiet reflection. One day she is affectionate, the next she needs solitude. This rhythm mirrors nature itself, the tides, the seasons, the waxing and waning of the moon. He may not understand it consciously, but something in his body recognizes it as profoundly feminine. To him, it feels like standing before a storm, terrifying in its force, yet impossible to look away from. What he does not realize is that her unpredictability is not manipulation, it is authenticity. She does not suppress her natural cycles to fit into his expectations. She does not amputate parts of herself to remain convenient. And because she refuses to collapse into conformity, she reminds him of what he has suppressed in himself. He too has depths, cycles, and contradictions, but he has buried them under layers of performance. Her mere existence threatens that performance, and yet he cannot resist her. This is the archetype of the muse and the destroyer combined. She inspires while dismantling the false self he clings to. Even the way she loves is different. Her affection is not given to soothe his insecurities, but is an overflow of her fullness. She does not beg for reciprocity, nor does she weaponize her care. She loves as a sovereign being, freely and without attachment. This kind of love is intoxicating because it cannot be earned or owned. It exists outside of transaction. For a man accustomed to love as dependency, this is both liberating and terrifying. He realizes he cannot buy her devotion, cannot trap her with obligation. He can only receive what she chooses to give, and at any moment, she may choose to withdraw. The seductive danger lies here. She reminds him that love is not possession, that true intimacy is not about control, but about freedom. Her presence dismantles the lies his ego has been taught about dominance, worth, and validation. She does not seduce him by appealing to his fantasies. She seduces him by awakening his truth. And truth, when it comes dressed as beauty, is unbearable to resist. To encounter such a woman is to face the possibility of transformation. For the man, she is both a dream and a nightmare, the answer to his longing and the undoing of his illusions. He is drawn to her not because she conforms to what he desires, but because she destabilizes everything he thought he knew about desire itself. What unsettles him most is that she does not orbit his world. She has a world of her own. Her passions, her creative fire, her inner sanctuary are not contingent upon his recognition. He sees her laugh with friends, disappear into her art, wander into solitude by choice, and in each act she asserts a life beyond him. For a man accustomed to being the sun around which others revolve, this is a devastating revelation. She is her own constellation, and to approach her he must humble himself, for he cannot command the galaxy. This independence is not coldness, though it may appear so to the fragile ego. It is warmth that does not beg. It is love that does not plead. And this balance of being open yet unattached, of being present yet free, becomes a force that he cannot place within the tidy boxes of his mind. It is dangerously seductive, precisely because it eludes definition. To name it will be to tame it, and she is untamable. Her mystery is not a game, nor a mask she wears to manipulate. It is the natural byproduct of a soul that has gone inward, wrestled with her own shadows, and emerged whole. She has faced rejection, loss, abandonment, and emerged without bitterness. She has walked through the valley of self-doubt and discovered the steady flame of her worth. This inner journey creates an aura he cannot touch. He sees it in the way her eyes hold depth without desperation, in the way her silence does not plead for rescue. To him, it feels like standing before an ancient temple sacred, unknowable, yet calling him closer. You may recognize this in yourself. The times you withdrew, not because you wished to punish, but because you needed to remember who you were without external noise. The nights you sat in silence, reclaiming the fragments of your soul. In those moments, you were not weak, but powerful beyond measure. And it is that reclamation of self that makes you magnetic. Men feel it, even if they cannot name it. They sense that you are not seeking completion from them, and paradoxically, that makes them long to be part of your orbit. Even the way she walks into a room becomes a statement. Not rushed, not frantic, not seeking approval, but grounded, deliberate, as though she belongs to herself. Every gesture whispers sovereignty. She does not shrink to be liked, nor does she inflate to be noticed. She simply exists in alignment with her essence, and that alignment shines brighter than any performance. This is why she is remembered not for being loud, but for being true. The danger of such seduction lies not in manipulation, but in exposure. A man confronted with her presence must see himself without masks. He begins to notice where he performs strength instead of embodying it, where he grasps for control instead of surrendering to connection, where his ego hides his vulnerabilities. She becomes a mirror, reflecting his shadows back to him. And yet he returns to the mirror again and again, because some part of him knows that transformation waits within that reflection. There's also danger in her boundaries. She does not hesitate to walk away when her values are violated. She does not collapse into excuses for bad behavior, nor does she contort herself to hold what cannot be held. Her departure is never loud, no storming out, no dramatic threats. It is quiet, graceful, final. And this, perhaps more than anything, is what terrifies him. For men are accustomed to women clinging, begging, negotiating, but she does not cling. She releases. She withdraws into mystery, and in that withdrawal, his ego shatters. He is left to sit with the absence, to face the emptiness that her presence once illuminated. It is here that her seduction becomes most dangerous, because it is not her body he craves, nor even her affection, but the wholeness she embodies. She awakens in him a hunger for authenticity, for depth, for meaning. And once awakened, that hunger cannot be silenced. He will search for her in others, but find only shadows. He will replay her words in his mind, not because of what she said, but because of what she represented. She embodied what he longed for yet feared. Truth without disguise, love without chains, freedom without apology. And so she becomes unforgettable, not because she tried to be, but because she dared to be herself. There comes a moment when the intensity softens, when the heat of desire cools into quiet reverence. The dangerous seduction of her presence does not last forever as a game of power. It matures into something greater. For what unsettled him in the beginning, her silence, her independence, her refusal to be tamed, begins to teach him something deeper about himself. A man who has been shaken by such a woman stands at a crossroads. He may resist, clinging to ego, or he may evolve, letting go of the illusions that once defined his strength. This is the paradox she embodies. The woman who withdraws into mystery is not running away, she is returning to herself. She is practicing the art of individuation. Jung spoke of the sacred journey of becoming whole, no longer fragmented by the need for validation. And in her wholeness, she shines with a light that both attracts and intimidates. That light does not ask for permission. It simply exists, steady, unwavering. Men who encounter this energy often mistake it for cruelty. But it is not cruelty, it is clarity. For the first time, he sees a love that cannot be possessed, a presence that cannot be diminished, a spirit that cannot be bought. And in this clarity, he feels the limits of his control. The realization shatters the ego, but within that fracture lies the possibility of growth. For her, the journey is not about seducing a man. It is about reclaiming the soul from the chains of expectation. It is about remembering that her worth is not measured in how many men chase, nor in how long they stay, but in the way she honors her own spirit. She does not wait for recognition, because her recognition comes from within. She does not barter her essence for affection, because her essence is priceless. And when she chooses to love, it is from abundance, not from lack. The true danger of her seduction is not that she destroys men, but that she awakens them. She calls them to step beyond superficial games and into the depths of their own shadow. Some will resist this call, retreating into pride or anger, but others will answer, shedding the false armor of ego and meeting her on the level of soul. These men will not seek to cage her, but to walk beside her, free and equal. And so, the story reaches its quiet conclusion. She has not changed for him. She has not bent, nor begged, nor bargained. She has remained herself, radiant in her sovereignty. And in doing so, she has transformed the dynamic completely. No longer is she the one waiting to be chosen. No longer is she the one proving her worth. Instead, she stands as chooser, not chaser. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.